Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Good morning. Welcome to Financial Issues. Thanks for tuning in today. We're so glad that you're here. It is Rapid Fire Friday, and you'll get to join us as we talk about defunding darkness, our ministry's strategy, the practical answer to how you honor God in the way that you invest. Defunding darkness by screening out companies who are using shareholder dollars to fund ungodly agendas, and funding the light, encouraging you to be a joyful, generous, and obedient giver. For $132 a year, you can be a partner with us. We hope that you are, and that you are on the partner conference call that we had yesterday for our partners. And if you weren't, I believe the partner conference call is uploaded to the website. So
I can confirm that, Shana. Just saw
it.
Listened to it earlier.
So
yep, that was great.
You guys can check that out. Our phone lines are open for this Rapid Fire Friday. The phone number, if you want to get in the call queue, you'll be the first person if you dial 610-363-1110. On today's show, we're going to get you caught up. We're going to get you in the know about this week's economic and market events. We'll also get encouragement from the scriptures. We'll be in Deuteronomy 8:18 today, and we'll also answer lots of your questions. 610-363-1110. So at Financial Issues, we help you to stay in the know about the financial issues of the day. We help keep you abreast of what's happening in the economy and the markets, and help you understand how that impacts your own personal financial issues. So today is June the 20th, 2025, and I've got a few takeaways from this week's happenings. We did get some housing data. The NAHB Builder Sentiment Index came out, and it revealed to us that homebuyers still don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Builder sentiment fell further to just 32 from 34 in May versus the estimate of 36. This is the lowest since December of 2022. Both the present and the future components were down by 2 points month over month, while prospective buyer traffic fell to just 21, down 2 points. To give you perspective, 50 is the break even between expansion and contraction. The NAHB highlighted the challenges by saying this: buyers are increasingly moving to the sidelines due to elevated mortgage rates and tariff and economic uncertainty. To help address affordability issues and bring hesitant buyers off the fence, a growing number of builders are moving to cut prices. They went on to say rising inventory levels and prospective home buyers who are on hold waiting for affordability conditions to improve are resulting in weakening price growth in most markets and generating price declines for resales in a growing number of markets. Given current market condition, the NAHB is forecasting a decline in single-family starts for 2025. Not surprising, as long as mortgage rates and home prices stay high, home buyers will stay on the sidelines. It's a vicious cycle, because if there is no demand for new homes, since home buyers aren't buying, then builders won't build. If homes are not being sold and households are not being created, weakness trickles into other areas of the economy. Think about what you do when you establish a household. You buy appliances, you buy furniture, you buy household goods. And if households are not being established because people aren't buying home, then sales in those areas remain weak too, because those households are not being established. It's estimated that somewhere around 15 to 18% of GDP, which is growth of our economy, comes from the housing industry and all of those things that touch it. The big news this week, or the other big news this week, I guess, is that the Federal Reserve released its updated economic outlook for the week. And while the headline, or the result, was no change to overnight rates, the real story is that the Fed sees stagflation on the horizon, as indicated by their most recent dot plot. So the Fed said that the economy is still expanding at, quote, a solid pace. Unemployment remains low, and inflation, though improved, is still somewhat elevated. What stood out to me, though, was that what they left out from their last meeting statement. They dropped the language about the rising risk of higher unemployment and higher inflation. This was sort of a quiet walk back of their earlier concerns, at least the concerns that they had at the last meeting. Still, projections are painting the picture of stagflation. Stagflation is higher inflation and slower growth happening simultaneously, which is a little bit scary because the Fed has zero tools in their toolbox to fight stagflation. For GDP, which is growth in the economy, the Fed sees now just 1.4% growth for the year 2025. That's down from what they were predicting at the last summary of economic projections in March. They were predicting 1.7% growth for 2025. And while the first quarter GDP was reported weak, the negative 1.4%, remember, and we started having all of those economists say, we're headed for recession. Well, Powell acknowledged that it was caused by businesses front running, trying to get ahead of the tariffs that were coming or soon to come that were announced in April, and inventories were being ramped up. They were importing a lot of the things that they need to sell or to make the products that they sell ahead of the pending tariffs. Meanwhile, consumer spending is moderating. Jay Powell did say that, and capital investment has rebounded. Now, that's actually not a terrible thing. It means that consumers are finally getting some price relief, spending less money to keep up with the pace of inflation, and businesses are still seeing opportunities worth investing in. As for the labor market, Powell says things are broadly in balance. To me, I read between the lines, that indicates that deportations have not decimated the workforce as feared. The Fed and others feared that would happen. I talked about all of this in more detail on our partner conference call, which is posted on our website. If you're a partner, you can go listen. Unemployment, they said, is still low at 4.2%, and wage growth has cooled, which means that the labor market is not a source of inflation concern for the economy. More on inflation. The Fed revised its 2025 projection up to 3%, mostly because of tariffs. There was a lot of tariff talk in the press conference that followed the decision. Powell had to concede that tariffs haven't yet hit consumers, but he said that nearly everyone that he knows agrees that they will, and that these tariffs will show up in the form of higher prices passed on to the consumer. It's clear that Powell and, quote, everyone that he knows disagrees with Trump that exporters will pay the tariffs by lowering their sales prices to U.S. importers. Still, the Fed expects that bump in inflation to be temporary, projecting a return to 2.4% inflation by the end of 2026, and finally right at 2.1%, close to their long-term target, by the end of 2027. On interest rates, Powell struck a cautious wait-and-see attitude. The Fed kept rates unchanged and said that they're well-positioned to respond to changing economic conditions. But here's what the dot plot really tells us. The median projection is 2 rate cuts by the end of 2025. The committee is deeply split. 7 members of the committee see no cuts, while 7 expect 2 cuts, and 1 member sees 3 cuts by year end. By 2026 and 27, projections drift a bit lower, but even most members see rates staying above 3% even longer term. When asked about the dot plot's usefulness, Powell basically admitted it's just more of their best guess than a roadmap. He said, quote, no one holds these rate paths with a lot of conviction. Translation, the Fed doesn't have a crystal ball, and they probably will be late again. Powell put forth a rebuttal that they do try to be forward-looking, citing their dramatic cut to rates for the pandemic, but they kind of got that wrong too. While Congress was flooding the American consumer with cash to buy goods that had stopped being imported and produced due to the global shutdown of supply chains, the Fed was printing all that money that Congress was borrowing to send to us and lowering the borrowing rates. That gave us the perfect storm for the historically high inflation that resulted. One more interesting thing that I observed from the press conference, Powell announced that the Fed will be cutting its own headcount by 10% over the next year or two, calling it an effort to be, quote unquote, good stewards of public funds. I can't help but wonder, though, was that really their own idea, or did the pressure come from somewhere else that starts with a D and ends with OGE? The bottom line, the economy is holding steady, but the Fed is clearly concerned about uncertainty, from tariffs to consumer sentiment to political pressure. I've got more to finish on this. I never quite get it in that first segment, so we're going to take a break, but we'll continue on. If you want to get your call queued up, you'll be the first caller in the queue, 610-363-1110. I'm your host, Shana Burt. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Through Crossroads Kids Club, lives like Dali's are being changed all over the world.
When I was 8 years old, my parents separated temporarily. It made me feel lost, empty, and without direction. Until one day, I went with my cousins to the Crossroads Club. This led me to know Lord Jesus and accept Him in my heart. He changed my life, and I don't feel lonely anymore.
Reaching kids with the hope of the gospel in schools and across the world. You can change a young life today at reachOurSchools.com.
Hi, this is Shana Burt, the host of Financial Issues. Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
Securities offered through G.A. Reffel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shana are hers alone and are for informational purposes only and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reffel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for sticking with us here. We're so glad that you're here on this Rapid Fire Friday. Our phone lines are open, and you'll be the first caller in the queue, 610-363-1110. I'm starting to wonder if everybody's on vacation. I know we're a few men down at the ministry for vacations, and I wonder if everybody else is out having it. And I hope they are. I hope they're spending time with their families and doing the things that are important. So I'll pick back up on my thoughts here to finish up the In the Know section. So while the Fed has not moved rates yet, Powell indicated that they are bracing for the turbulence in the months ahead that they think will be caused by the tariffs, which in all actuality are not even really settled yet. We're still in that pause period. So Powell was a little bit inconsistent in his message. He kind of patted themselves on the back for being forward-looking with those rate cuts as the pandemic started, because they know, and they say often, that monetary policy takes a while to work through the economy. The tools that they have to raise and lower the overnight rates. They often pay lip service to this because they say that those tools have long and variable lags in the economy. So although the market responds immediately one way or another, the economy is much slower to respond. But they still refuse to get ahead of the tariff situation that he predicts will not be good. Christopher Waller, one of the Fed governors, spoke this morning on CNBC just before our show started, and he's obviously the dove in the bunch. He says that the data that they're looking at, the economic data, shows the economy is good and rates should start to come down. He doesn't think that tariffs will cause a persistent increase to inflation. So I don't know, maybe Powell doesn't know Waller, because he said everybody that he knows tends to agree with him, but it doesn't sound really like Waller does. He doesn't think that tariffs will cause that persistent increase to inflation. He says that the job market is solid, but we are starting to see some weakening. He does acknowledge that, and he referred to a Wall Street Journal article that says that college graduates are not finding jobs at the same pace that they used to. And I think the unemployment rate for college grads is 7%, which is higher than the 4.2% general unemployment rate. He says, he did a quick calculation, and he thinks that the one-time impact of tariffs to the economy or to inflation will be between 0.3 of a point and 0.5 point. So it was interesting what he said there. He also put the burden of keeping inflation low back on Congress's shoulders by suggesting that, without outright saying it, that they get spending under control. Shifting gears a little bit, CEOs are also in wait-and-see mode. The Fed is, the market is, the world is waiting to see what Trump will do with America's involvement in the Middle East situation. So that's the theme this week, really, is just wait and see. So CEOs get surveyed quarterly in a CEO roundtable, and the last survey that was conducted the first week in June of this month says that CEOs are a little bit uncertain, or getting a little bit more uncertain. While the index remains above the recession signaling threshold number of 50, it's dropped to 69, is the weakest sentiment since 2020. The Business Roundtable for the second quarter of 2025, the CEO economic outlook fell to the 15 points to that 69 level. And it's sitting well below its long-term average of around 83. The decline spans across three sub-indices. Hiring plans, so CEOs are asked three primary questions about their hiring plans, and their plans to hire dropped 19%. Now, over 40% of CEOs now expect to reduce employment in the next 6 months. That was up from just 29% of them expecting to reduce employment the last time the survey went out. Capital spending, so this is business investment, their intentions slipped 15 points. Only 13%, that's the same as the last quarter, expect to actually decrease spending, but only 28% versus the 43% last month plan to increase spending. Their sales expectations fell as well by about 11 points. 67% of CEOs surveyed still expect their sales to increase over the next 6 months. That's a pretty healthy number. CEOs voiced concerns around inflation, tariffs, and unclear trade policy, which continue to weigh on sentiment and keep them in that wait-and-see mode. At the end of the day, CEOs make tough decisions with limited clarity every single day, and those that are good at it continue to survive when times get tough and thrive when things are good. The Business Roundtable CEO Joshua Bolten said that the downturn is largely attributable, quote, to broad-based uncertainty and unpredictable trade policy environment. He went on to say that extending and enhancing tax reform is critical, but it is not sufficient. American businesses also need the administration to rapidly secure deals with our trading partners that open markets, remove harmful tariffs, and provide certainty for investment. The markets this week took a breather after weeks of resilience, and there was a noticeable shift in sentiment among investors, central banks, and even CEOs. Again, to that theme of this week, which is wait and see. Since last Friday, the markets are slightly in negative territory. Since last Friday, the Dow's down right at 1%, the S&P's down 42 basis points, and the Nasdaq's barely negative at 0.13% down. The pre-markets this morning are looking at what's happening in the Middle East, since they have clarity now about what the Fed has done or announced that they've done, at least for this week. And this is what is driving sentiment this morning. So we're all in wait and see mode as to what will happen with Israel and Iran over the next 2 weeks. So the pre-markets are indicating a slight positive open, with all three indices indicating an open up of about 1/3 of a point. So what's coming next week? We'll get existing home sales. Expect to continue home sales to be muted, held captive by those golden handcuffs, with mortgage rates still around that 7% mark. Those who have mortgages, existing mortgages, I believe about 90% of the mortgages are below 5%, and they don't want to trade in their 3%, 4%, or 5% mortgage for a 7% mortgage, so they're staying put. Durable good orders will come in next week as well. We refer to the durable goods orders numbers, refer to new orders placed with manufacturers for delivery of hard goods, which are meant to last at least 3 years. So think washers, dryers, refrigerators, all the things that people buy when they're buying or building new homes, plus electronics, aircraft, business equipment, and other things. We'll also get core PCE for the month of May. That is the Fed's preferred measure of inflation. And we'll get personal income and spending numbers, which will give us a glimpse into ongoing insight into consumer behavior and inflation pressure, meaning we will see if wages continue to stay ahead of inflation. Now that you're in the know about the recent and upcoming financial issues, we hope that you'll learn more how you can integrate those issues into your own stewardship and honor God by adopting a biblically responsible investment strategy by becoming a partner with us. And we'll continue to encourage you to be a joyful, generous, and obedient giver. If you haven't already, I encourage you to sign up for our newsletter. You'll get a recap of the week's happenings. There's always a little video, this In the Know video, that gets you caught up on the week's happenings in our newsletter, as well as lots of other great information. And the newsletter is free to anyone and everyone who wants to share their email address with us, and we do protect that email address. We don't share it with other people. And that's all that you'll get from us. You won't get lots of requests begging for money or different things like that. You'll just get what you ask for. So remember, your investments have a purpose. You can help to defund darkness by keeping money out of the hands of corporations who would use it to fund ungodly agendas. Let's get to that stewardship verse of the day. What do you say? Deuteronomy 8:18, and you shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he who gives you power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore to your fathers, as it is this day. What do you think, Seth?
That's a good one, Shana. You know, I think we know that God is the one who gives us wealth, but he also gives us the ability to earn wealth. So if any of us thought that any of our wealth came by our own hands, this verse pretty much implodes that thought, that actually God gave you the ability to earn it as well. It's really all from him. So I think we just need to remember that we need to rely on the Lord to provide for what we need, and exhibit a heart of gratitude for what he's given us. It's far better than we deserve, Shana, and it really is all of him. We say that on the show all the time. Sometimes we close the show with it. It really is all his. It's all his.
Amen. It is.
Yeah.
So there really is no such thing as the self-made person.
That's right. That's right.
We're all made by our Creator, and we're all given the ability to get what we have from God. It doesn't just magically show up in our bank accounts. He gives us the ability to work, to earn income. So how do we do what the Scripture says and remember our God? Well, by honoring Him in the way that we handle the money that He gave us and the way we handle our ability to get that money. Or that wealth. We do our best to keep it out of the hands of companies who would deploy it on behalf of darkness. And we purposefully deploy it into His kingdom to further His kingdom. All right. Our phone lines are still open. 610-363-1110 is the phone number to call. You'll be the first caller in the queue, and we'll get to you after we come back from the break. Now, if you're listening on an outlet that only carries the short version of the show, we wish you a farewell. We hope that you have a wonderful day of worship on Sunday and that you come back next week. For everyone else, stick around. We've got more financial issues coming right up.
In the last 10 to 15 years being in ministry, being married, something that has been constant in our lives is Samaritan Ministries. As we've moved, we've had babies, we've had different things come up, we have just been able to rely on Samaritan in ways that we never really even thought about before becoming members.
Our heart's desire is to plant roots and be in a place for a really long time. It's how we were raised. We see the benefits of that, but we also see the open-handedness of being used by the Lord wherever He calls, because we just assumed when we started pursuing church planting, the quickest way to get from point A to point B is a straight line. And with the Lord, sometimes you find out it looks a lot more like this. And yet, Samaritan was with us through the entire thing.
We didn't have to look into, we have to change insurances now because we've moved states or whatever the case may be. And it's just been a real blessing to us in different phases of life.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Colleen.
And we're the Gen X.
And we're Samaritan members.
If you're like me and used to think managing your investments was overwhelming or just for the experts, think again. I used to believe I needed a financial analyst to handle everything, but financial issues showed me I could manage my own investments while staying true to my faith. It's completely transformed how I handle my finances. What felt like a foreign language is now simple. I can buy and sell stocks with confidence, knowing my investments align with my faith. And the best part, this empowering, life-changing guidance is affordable. Just $132 a year. FISM gave me the tools to restructure my portfolio, diversify, and track my investments, all in a God-honoring way. Their video library taught me how to steward what God has entrusted to me with wisdom. If you're ready to gain financial peace and manage your investments with purpose, I can't recommend Financial Issues enough. It's something anyone can do.
To learn more, go to financialissues.org.
If you don't get life right, you're not going to get all the other issues correct, period. It is the issue that impacts every other issue. Life is the central part of what keeps this republic together. It is the contract that the founding fathers passed down through multiple generations. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. You don't have life, you don't have a republic. There is a temptation out there right now. And I want to just tell you we must resist it. There's this temptation that we cast this issue aside. How does that honor God? It doesn't. And if it wasn't for preborn, I would be super just confused and depressed, because there has never been, in my opinion, a more disjointed time in the pro-life movement. We need a machine to go up against the Planned Parenthood beast. Like, we have to play offense against the pro-abortion forces in this country, okay? We have to play offense. And preborn does it in this compassionate, merciful, godly way that is just so inspiring and amazing.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. We're so glad that you're here. I'm your host, Shana Burt. The phone lines are open, 610-363-1110. We do have one person waiting in the call queue, but you'll be next. I do want to give you a little bit, I guess a little bonus thing to think about here for those of you that stuck around for the second half. Came across an article yesterday. There's a pro-Israel hacking group called Predatory Sparrow, and they were able to infiltrate Iran's largest cryptocurrency exchange that serves over 10 million customers, called Nabatex, I guess. I don't know if I'm saying that right. And they basically stole around $90 million in digital assets and deliberately destroyed them. So the hackers sent them to some what did they call it? A vanity blockchain address with a kind of a sort of a off-color message that we won't repeat on the show. But basically, they destroyed about $90 million in crypto. So the act was really intended to protest Nabatex's alleged role in helping the Iranian regime evade sanctions and finance terrorism for all of these years, making the sabotage symbolic and punitive rather than a typical theft for profit. So I guess we have some vigilantes out there on the web that are doing things. And, I think the things that are happening in the Middle East are going to happen on a lot of different fronts. I mean, there's a lot of things that are being said in the news, a lot of things I think that can strike terror in the hearts. I mean, even my 12-year-old was away. It's summertime at my house, and she had a friend spend the night last night, and they were up still at 4 o'clock this morning when I woke up to get ready for the show.
I don't know how the kids do that.
So, apparently, there's things even that are getting to the 12-year-olds on TikTok, and they were saying, I thought Iran was supposed to bomb us this week, and what's happening. So it's a miracle that I was prepared for the show at all, because I jumped all over that opportunity to minister to these 12-year-old girls about what is happening in the world. And it was, I think the Holy Spirit gave me the right words at just the right time and to give to them. And, I told them it goes all the way back to, I said, do you remember learning about Abraham in school? And one of them said yes, Sunday school, and one of them said yes, and one of them said no. And I said, well, Abraham was called by God to leave his home and his land and his family and go to a place that the Lord would promise him. He was promised a son. They went about doing it the wrong way. There were actually two sons that were born. One was an illegitimate son. One was the son of promise. The Jews and all of the Christians are descended from the son of promise, and the Muslims are descended from the illegitimate son, but they believe that they are the rightful son. So that is, based on mistakes that two people made long ago, that is why this is happening. And Iran and the religious regimes that are in charge there, they spend all of their time, all of their resources, all of their money on one thing, and that is to destroy and wipe Israel off the face of the earth. And that is what is happening. And they've almost got the weapon that could do that. And Israel knows it. And so they're fighting back, and America is considering joining in. And, Iran hates Israel and they hate America, and that's essentially what is happening right now. So then they went into the questions about, well, are they going to hell? And I said, well, anybody that rejects Jesus as Lord and Savior is going to hell, unfortunately. And then they went into, well, how many times do you have to accept Jesus? And so I had the opportunity to present the gospel to them as well. So it was a very eventful morning. And, I just say that to say, we should all be in prayer for what's happening in the world, but we should do it with boldness and not with fear. So many times in the scripture, it tells us not to be afraid. God knows everything. He is in control of everything. There is nothing that happens in the earth or in the heavens that is a surprise to the Lord. And, we are privileged to get to watch what's happening in the world right now. We are privileged to get to spend some of our time praying for those things, and praying for people that all would come to the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ and enter into eternal glory with us. So that's the real important things that are happening in the world right now. Our mission, though, is to talk about things as they relate to economics. But, it all ties in together, because what we're doing, we're constantly reminding you that God owns it all, and we need to use it to honor Him for His glory and for our good, and to finance the kingdom. So, back to what I started with there, with the cyber attacks that are happening. This war is going to be very, very have a lot of different fronts, and so there's not just the bombs that we see dropped from planes or the nuclear weapons that we hear about. There's or the assassinations or the different things that we hear about. There's cyber war that's happening, and that can impact our own financial issues. So I say this not because I'm trying to scare anybody or anything. We've said this for a long time, for many years going back, but it really is a good idea to keep some cash at home. You want to be balanced. You want to, there's still a risk to keeping cash at home, that it could be burned up or it could be stolen or different things like that. But if there are cyber attacks, then, there are risks that our financial systems can be shut down even temporarily. So, it's a good idea just to be prudent, to have some extra cash at home. All right. Let's get to Lynn. Lynn's calling from Oregon. Hi, Lynn. You're live on Financial Issues.
Hey, good morning. I'm wondering if you know anything about the tax package that is currently being considered from President Trump that affects Social Security tax.
Yeah, so I know that on the campaign trail, President Trump did float the idea of no tax on Social Security. That did not make it purely into the current bill that the Senate, that the House passed, and we don't know what's going to happen yet with the Senate bill. So, it's kind of hard to speculate about what may end up happening, but I can tell you what's in there from the House is that it's not a complete elimination of taxes for Social Security. It does make more of the Social Security benefits that people receive less taxable, but it doesn't completely make it tax-free. But we don't know yet what the Senate might do.
I've heard mention something about $4,000, and I didn't know if that meant the first $4,000 in taxes that you would pay would be eliminated, or if just $4,000 of what you earn would be not taxable.
I don't think it's really either one. There's some talk of increasing the exemption. I think everybody's situation is going to be impacted differently. There are some people that don't pay taxes at all on Social Security because they don't have much other income. So it's I think it's still going to really be determined by how much other income you have and what the exemptions are. Well, thanks for calling, Lynn. We appreciate that question. The phone lines are open now if you want to get in. We're about to get the ag report from Craig Haugaard. After Craig, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be back with more financial issues. If you want to get your call queued up, the number is 610-363-1110. We'll also entertain some questions from the chat and from social media as well. So we hope that you're going to stick with us, because here comes Craig.
This is Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update for June 20th. Corn was pulled higher Wednesday in sympathy with the wheat rally. The weekly ethanol report showed a slight week-over-week increase in production. The average market year-to-date production is running 3.8% over the same period a year ago. At the closing bell, December corn was 5.25 cents higher at $4.44 per bushel. It was a relatively quiet day for the soybean complex on Wednesday as we closed slightly higher. November futures have now posted gains for 4 straight sessions, pushing nearly 50 cents higher from last Thursday's low to Wednesday's high. On Wednesday, November beans were a half cent higher at $10.68 1/4. Wheat markets exploded higher across the board as funds attempted to cover their massive short futures position. A combination of factors seems to be driving the rally, including an extremely wet U.S. picture, a surge in fighting in the Black Sea region between Russia and Ukraine, and the war between Israel and Iran. Minneapolis September wheat was 17 1/4 cents higher at $6.61 1/2. Kansas City rose by 24 cents to close at $5.86 1/2, and Chicago was 25 cents higher at $5.90 1/2. Cotton futures seem like they may want to retest the recent lows. On Wednesday, we had December futures down 88 points for the session, closing at 66.67. Livestock futures all turned in positive closes. August live cattle were $1.02 higher at $211.67 per hundredweight. August feeder cattle rose by 82 cents as they closed out today at $304.17 per hundred. And we had August lean hog futures 20 cents higher at $112 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures broke sharply once again as they seem like they want to go down and test that life of contract low that we set back in early April. At the closing bell, we had July futures down 28 points as they closed out today at $17.68. This has been Craig Haugaard with your Financial Issues Ag Update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
It's up to us to stand up and say, enough is enough. All of this unbiblical stuff that's going on, whether it's abortion or transsexual or LGBTQ, widespread pornography, human trafficking. Bottom line, it's still up to us. If we stop investing in these corporations that are trying to destroy us, sooner or later they're going to wake up.
To learn more about biblically responsible mutual funds and ETFs, go to timothyplan.com.
Through the ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org, that is preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn banner.
From the time Crossroads began back in 1998, our sole focus was on reaching children in public schools in the United States. And then in 2017, we decided to translate our curriculum into Spanish, primarily so that we could serve Spanish-speaking churches and students in the U.S. And as I was connecting with a pastor in Chicago and telling him about the materials that Crossroads had in Spanish and about what Kids Club was all about, he said, "Hey, I have a friend in Mexico who I think would really benefit from these materials and your approach to working with children." And so I began the conversation with Rolando Gonzalez. March of 2018, I traveled for the first time to Guadalajara and met with Rolando, and right away we just connected on a heart level. And so we sent a team in August of 2018 to train leaders here in Mexico, and the first international kids clubs were born.
Reaching kids with the hope of the gospel in schools and across the world. You can change a young life today at reachOurSchools.com.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for sticking with us. We're at the home stretch of Rapid Fire Friday today. If you get your call queued up, you've got maybe the next 1 to 2 minutes to get that done if you want to get into today's show. 610-363-1110 is the phone number. While we're waiting, though, let's get to some of these questions that have come in.
Yeah, cool, Shana. Let's start with James. James asking a good question here on the chat. Hello to everyone on the chat. And James' question is, what is the sweet spot for CDs if the Fed is going to cut 50 to 75 basis points in the next 2 years? I'm looking at 2 to 4 years to get over 4%. What do you think?
Yeah, so I think that, if you look at FX3, that's going to be really correlated to what short-term rates are, and that's going to be driven by what the Fed does. So as the Fed cuts rates, we'll see the yield on that continue to decline. We've seen it decline from over 5% to, I think the forward yield right now is about 4.14. So if you're trying to decide, do you do that one or do you use CDs to make up the rest of your or some of your fixed income portion of your portfolio, then I would say the number is somewhere over, 4.25. If you can lock in 4.25, for the next 1 to 2 years, I think that'll be good. I think the Fed's going to be kind of slow to cut rates too, so you'll be comparable between those two. But again, the fixed income, the purpose for the fixed income is, yes, to get some yield, but it's also to bring some stability into the portfolio as well to help with that volatility.
Great, Shana. Next one we have, as we're waiting for William in the call queue there, is Pete from Seattle. This is a great question, Shana. I'm excited to hear your answer. He says, please do a segment on what you mean by a final tithe. If at all possible, we should give God a regular tithe, 10% minimum on our gross income over the course of our lives, to include that coming from rents, pensions, annuities, non-invested interest, dividends, capital gains. But it seems that the final tithe would be 10% or more of the unrealized gains on our investments at the time of our bodily death. What would you have to say to that, Shana? Pete, 65.
Yeah, so I think that's definitely one way to look at it, and I think this is a really good teachable moment. And I think the takeaway here is that we can never outgive God. And I certainly don't ever want to be in the situation of robbing God. So as you see with Pete, there's a lot of different ways that you could calculate this. Some people give off of the top line, some people give off the bottom line. And then there's that question of what do we do, for those assets that we have unrealized gains in. So for example, we bought our home for $100,000. It's now worth $500,000, but we're still living in it. We haven't sold it. We haven't realized any of the gain from it yet. But, there's going to come a point in time where we go home to be with the Lord and all of these things are left behind. Then there's going to be gains that are in those. So, the calculations can get really complicated. But again, I always fall back on that thought that we can never outgive God, and we never want to rob God. So for me, I would say 10% is a bare minimum, to give on current income, what you're currently receiving. But I never want to miscalculate. So for me personally, I give off of the top line, not the bottom line, to make sure that I'm giving at least 10%. And then, I have plans and provisions to give 10% of the net worth to the kingdom upon the death of the second spouse. So if I predecease my husband, I want him to be able to use the money and then, carry out the wishes upon the death of the second spouse, give that money into the kingdom. Now, I have minor children, so I can see that changing a little bit as I train my children up in the ways of the Lord, teach them, how to become adults, how to handle money, teach them how to become financially independent. If I died today, there's a lot of things that I would want to provide for my children because they are still minors. Once the children are grown, though, once they have the responsibility of using the gifts that God gave them to generate their own income, I could see this changing. I could see, the portion that I want to leave into kingdom increasing over that time, because I believe that if I raise my kids in the fear and admonition of the Lord, that the Lord is going to bless them and to prosper them, and that they will experience financial prosperity. So, it's not at all about the calculation, because we're told in Scripture that God looks at the heart of a man. So it's not about getting the calculation or the tithe completely right. It's about our hearts being right. So I think that if we strive to be generous, what we always say on the show, joyful, generous, and obedient givers, then I believe that God sees that intent in our heart, and that's what He blesses, not necessarily the calculation. So the scripture also says to give what you determine in your heart, to give joyfully. And so I think that's where it all starts. So that can look a little bit different, I think, for everybody, but that's my personal take on it and my personal opinion.
That's awesome, Shana. Thanks for sharing that. Looks like William's ready if you want to get to William.
Okay,
from
let's try to do it.
All right.
Hi, William. You're live on Financial Issues.
Thank you for taking my call. I'm 67 and retired. My question is, and help me with it because I don't have it real formed in my mind real good, but I'm overweight in EFT2, and but it's in my traditional IRA. I'm thinking if I sell down to where I need to be, I'm in the income sector thing, and I'm thinking if I sell that, there's really no tax consequences because it's in the IRA, and then start putting it in the preferreds and REITs. And I'm scared to buy too much REITs or preferreds at one time. I'm thinking buy about 1.5% of my total in there, and then put it on dividend reinvestment in individual stocks. Do you have any thoughts on it?
Yeah, sure. The most effective tool that you're going to have in making that decision is the portfolio tracker. And it sounds to me like you maybe have spent some time already taking a look at that. So if you're overweighted in that, you probably know that from looking at your tracker. And if you sell that, you are correct that if it's held in your IRA and you sell it, there is no tax reporting on that. There is no tax consequence. The only time that you pay tax on the IRA is whenever you distribute money from it. So as long as that trade's happening inside the IRA, it's not even reportable to the IRS. So once you have that sold and you have the cash, then you need to decide where to deploy it. So sounds to me like you've looked at your tracker and you're probably short in the preferred and REITs category. So depending on how much extra cash that generates, if it's not a lot, if it's 5% or so of your entire portfolio, I would feel comfortable doing it all at once with some of the preferreds or REITs that are on the list right now. If you're a little bit nervous, the preferreds not so much. I mean, they tend to fluctuate in value a little bit, but they act more like fixed income investments than they do equities. There is downside risk. Don't get me wrong. There is potential for downside fluctuation, but I would do all of the preferreds at one time, assuming it's not half your portfolio or something like that, which I don't think it would be because I know what the asset allocation model looks like. Now, the REITs are a little bit different story. Those can fluctuate. So if you are a little nervous about doing it all at once, you could take the amount of money that you need to redeploy, divide it by 3, and then do it over the next 3 months.
Okay. That sounds good. I'm not real good at doing that 3 months, but that's the advice you've been given. So appreciate that.
All right, William. Well, thanks.
Thanks for the call, William.
Yep, that was a great question.
That's good. Hey, Shannon, we got a great comment here quickly from Eddie of Tennessee. He just put this in the chat here. He said, Shannon and Seth, I've been using the QCD process for making charitable contributions from my IRA, and it works great. By listening to this show, you have helped me reduce my taxes by using this feature. It's pretty cool.
That's great. It's, I don't even know if a lot of financial professionals know about it or if they even get into that. But, I believe that it's not just about what you make, the kind of return that you can make on your investments. It's about what you get to keep at the end of the day, because if you're saving money on taxes, as he points out there, then that's a great thing. The bottom line, keeping more of what you have. And so if you're 70 and a half is what he's talking about, if you're 70 and a half and you have money in an IRA and you give money directly from the IRA to a qualified nonprofit organization, then you get to, I see the tax form up there on the screen, you get to report that on your taxes, because you get a 1099 saying everything that was distributed from your IRA, including what you gave. That has to go on one line, but then it also asks how much of that is taxable. So if you gave it to a nonprofit organization, you're going to keep your documentation, like the letter showing where it went, for your tax records, but you get to say that whatever part of it you gave was not taxable. That's in addition to the either the standard or the standard deduction that you might take. So it's a great way of boosting returns just a little bit. All right, folks, I hear the music. That means we got to go today, but we hope that you have a wonderful day of worship on Sunday. We hope that you come back next week because, Lord willing, we will be here to remind you that time is getting short. The Master is coming back. There's going to be a test. We're going to be asked how we handled the time, talent, and treasure that we were trusted to manage, and our goal is to help you be found a good and faithful steward of everything God has trusted you to manage. I'm your host, Shana Burt. Find out more about our ministry at financialissues.org and come back next week.
If we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.